So I'm Nancy Wallace-Laabs. I'm your host tonight, and normally I am joined by my daughter Kelsey, but like I said, she's out with one of her sick babies. So you're just going to have me tonight. So let's talk a little bit about ForeclosuresDaily.com. If you have not used their leads before, you're not familiar with the company, so they're a nationwide list provider, and they connect investors, realtors, attorneys, first-time buyers with high-quality leads. I personally have been using their leads since 2018. I have used other list companies in the past, but what I found out was that Foreclosures Daily always has real estate attached to their leads. So sometimes when I would use another list company, I would, do my marketing and people would call me, and the next thing I know, I'm working with people who have a gun collection or a coin collection or art collection, and you know what? I just end up having to refer that business out because that's not what I do. So Foreclosures Daily, as I said, I've been using them since 2018. I do specialize in the pre-probate, probate, divorce leads. So they are the industry leader in business, and they've been in business since 2004. They've become the internet's top destination for detailed, timely real estate information. And some of the information that you get about the properties is, so let's talk about pre-probate. I did that last month. And you get the deceased name, you get the property address, you get like what type of property it is, single family, land, mobile home, condominiums, multifamily, the year, but more importantly, you get the property value. So if you have a certain way that you want to market to those leads, like for me, I only market to leads that have a value of up to $300,000, and that's just how I do my investing business. So they're a company that they have expertise that you can trust. They have a commitment to excellence, which ensures you receive the most accurate and up-to-date data that is available out there. So Foreclosures Daily, now I could list off some other list companies, but how are they different? How are we different? Well, I call it the ForeclosuresDaily.com advantage. So they're real estate focused data. As I said before, all of their data, all of their lists that they have is attached, the leads that you get, it's attached to real estate, not those gun collections or art collections or penny collections, or no real estate at all. They're depending on the type of lead that you get, they can be delivered daily, weekly, or monthly. So for me, the pre-probate is what I've been working since 2018. I get them every Wednesday. So I'll get a fresh batch tomorrow that I will go ahead and put in the hopper, and we're going to look at a little bit. We're doing an experiment on, I always use postcards, or I'm sorry, I use note cards, and I'm going to try postcards tomorrow just to see. We're doing an A/B test. You get the property appraisal insight, which is really, really good, especially when we talk tonight about short-term rentals. Unlike other reports from other companies, the data is farmed exclusively for real estate market, and they prioritize delivering up-to-date targeted information to keep you ahead of the game. So what kind of leads can you get? Well, I already talked about the probate and pre-probate, divorce, absentee owners. So these are people who own property, but they might be a landlord, maybe it's a vacant property, distressed properties, code violations, evictions, inheritance, auctions, okay, tax lates, lis pendens, which is another type of tax note, and a cash buyers list. So very interesting. I'm working with a wholesaling company, and so they're looking for cash buyers. So I was like, well, hey, they have a list of cash buyers right here, right? So you can, you really can build your whole investing strategy right through foreclosuresdaily.com. So on pricing, what you need to do is contact your Foreclosures Daily representative. If you're on the email list, they have sales a lot. And they have some really blowout end of the year sales coming up. That's actually how I got started, I believe. I think if Joe's on the call here, and what I did is I was just the timing, I was at the end of the year, and so they were having a great sale. So I ended up buying a whole year's worth of leads. So unlike competitors, there's online pricing, old data, empty promises. Representatives calculate prices based on your demographics and target audience. So what we do is we bundle data into customized packages that combines various products. So it's really depending on what your investing strategy is all about, and that's where a representative from Foreclosures Daily can help you. So let's just look at one example of if you're in Tennessee, Davidson County, it has a population of 640,000 people compared to LA County with a population of nearly 9.7 million. So, you're going to get more names in the LA County, but, it's a little bit harder to, hold investment properties in California, especially right now. So your marketing dollars are vital to the success of Foreclosures Daily, not only theirs, but yours. And they're all skilled professionals. I've been working with Joe for a long time. They have decades of experience in the real estate industry. So not only can they help you with, like the area that you might want to invest in and market to, but they can help you with your budget. Now, when you become a client of Foreclosures Daily, you also get a marketing toolbox because they want you to be successful. We want you to be successful. So we're going to teach you all about the 6-step mailing campaign, right? And then there's a follow-up strategy. I'm sure if you've been investing, you might hear the term, the follow-up the gold is in the follow-up, right? Because when you reach out to people on a list, whether you cold call them or direct mail them, it's very rare that you get the deal like first time out. And it does happen, and I have had it happen too, but normally you have to hit the marketing list a couple times at least, right? So there's phone scripts, there's pre-written emails, depending on if you were going to do probate. And February, we're having Al Nicoletti come on, and he's a probate attorney. And he can talk to you about, like, there's written email templates because there's a whole strategy around just contacting attorneys. You can get professionally designed postcards and letters. You get Nancy's book. Can you see it? Winning Deals and Heels. This was my first book I published. It was a #1 top seller or whatever. Exclusive link for discounted mail rates, links for reduced skip tracing. There's webinars like this one you're attending tonight. And then if you haven't done pre-probate before, when you sign up, they'll actually send you a training video of how I actually step-by-step market to the pre-probate leads. So a little bit about me and my daughter, Kelsey Laka. So I've been investing in real estate single family since 2006. I'm best-selling author. I have owned a property management company. So my specialty is in single family. And then Kelsey came from the corporate background, and she was working for a Fortune 500 company. And after her second child, she stepped away. And her story is that she's always been on the outskirts of real estate investing. So she became a full-time real estate investor about a year and a half ago. Now we put this all together, my experience, what I'm teaching Kelsey, what I've learned over the years, and we're showing you how you can work these leads and find opportunities, because that's really what it's about. Foreclosures Daily has the tools, if you will, to give you the opportunity to make money in real estate investing. And tonight we're going to be talking about finding profitable short-term rentals and how to use Foreclosures Daily leads to build your short-term rental income. Now, why do short-term rentals still matter? Now, they still matter, but only where you live, right? Because during COVID, tons of people bought short-term rentals, and people made a lot of money during COVID with short-term rentals. And when I talk about short-term rentals, I'm talking about Airbnbs, VRBOs. Now some people are having to shift into other kinds of short-term rentals, like midterm rentals. You might have heard that. This is like anything that's less than 12 months, right? That's what we're really talking about. So midterm rentals typically will be about 3 to 6 months, and it's usually a corporate lease, maybe an insurance company, and there's all kinds of platforms to put your properties on. But the thing is, now you have to pay really close attention to the area that you're purchasing. So where I live, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So there's still a lot of areas that short-term rentals do very, very well. Dallas is one of those areas, they're still up in the air because of the restrictions that are going on. So you have to it's not just about the city restrictions, you also have to be concerned about the HOA restrictions on whether you can have short-term rentals. You know, a lot of people lost their ability to have short-term rentals where they were able to do weekends and, 3 or 4 days. I think Florida is still really good, but that you still have higher income potential, you have more control over pricing, and the demand is driven by location, not just guest appreciation, because you could have the best experience and offer all of these amenities and have a beautiful property. But if you happen to purchase a property, like a client of mine purchased a property, and I usually get clients after they already do something and then they're not making any money. So he purchased a property in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City has a lot. I mean, they've got Worlds of Fun, they have gambling, they have the riverboat. So there's a lot of activities. There's the KU Medical Center is up there. So there's a lot of things that draw people there. And he bought a beautiful older home. I mean, it was just craftsman. It was gorgeous. I saw pictures of it. But then I did a Google search of the area around it. And he was right next to 2 or 3 vacant lots. It was a high crime area, and there was a kind of a dump area. So guess what? He got a couple gassed, and then as soon as they wrote the review, I mean, the property was really nice, but the location was not, because people didn't even feel safe walking out the door. So the key is selecting the right property, just not more properties. So the real mistake that I see investors make is that they don't fail at short-term rentals because of operations. They fail because they buy the wrong property in the wrong area. And really, it's that simple. Because like in real estate investing, it always comes down to the numbers. Is this going to make me money? So through this presentation, I'm going to show you different platforms that you can go, but everything starts with the lead selection. So I talked about, I'm going to just go to the next. So why Foreclosures Daily leads are ideal for short-term rentals? Well, this is why. Number one, you could go on to the MLS and you could multiple listing service, and you could pay full price for a short-term rental, and it might do good, right? It might do good. But with the Foreclosure Daily lead list, you can find off-market properties, so you make money on the buy, right? Because you're getting it at a discount already because you're working directly with the seller, so you're avoiding having to pay the realtor commissions and that kind of thing. Motivated sellers create pricing flexibility. So when I'm dealing with people in the pre-probate section, now the house might need some repairs. It might need to be fixed up. But even if you buy something off of the MLS, unless it's really turnkey, more than likely you're going to have to go in there and spruce it up, and you're going to have to furnish it, and you're going to have to make it stand out. You're going to have to make an experience, right? So probate, pre-probate, and foreclosure leads surface properties before retail buyers. So you have a greater opportunity of buying a property in a targeted area. So the reason that I say this is that when you work with your Foreclosures Daily representative, you can say, okay, I want to invest in Tampa, Florida, or I want to invest in Tennessee, Pigeon Forge, that's a Gatlinburg, all of that area. And their lists are nationwide. So you're just not like, I live in the DFW area. And so I invest not in the DFW area, but about 90 minutes. And there's, several lake communities where I live, and that's where I have my short-term rentals. And I found it through ForeclosuresDaily.com. So what I do is I say, okay, I want to invest in properties in this neighborhood, in this zip code, in this county. And that's where the Foreclosures Daily folks can work with you about targeting where you want to invest. So the simple Foreclosures Daily short-term rental targeting strategy that I use is you start with an area, not property. So I know already in Dallas-Fort Worth, I'm not even going to look for properties for a short-term rental in Dallas County because they're still up in the air about what they're going to do with short-term rentals. However, I do live in Frisco, Texas, and they're a-okay with us having short-term rentals. Now, it's a bit saturated, so, I'm probably not going to just go out and go, yay, I want to buy here, but we have a lot of sporting events here. We have the Cowboys here. We have, they're opening up a Universal Studios. I mean, they have universities, so there's a lot of reasons why people would come to Frisco, Texas. So I can target areas for tourism, like Disneyland. Okay, that's, I don't know what the zip code is in Disneyland or the county, but it probably has its own. But you could target properties in that area off of the Foreclosures Daily. Same with any, like, think Ohio, where I think that's where they have amusement parks. Or maybe you're going to go after corporate, so you kind of have to think about what kind of short-term rental are you looking for, right? And then you're going to target the area. So that draws people like tourism, hospitals, like traveling nurses, big events, not just a quarterly event or a yearly event, but what areas have events all the time? Like the lake area that I was talking about, that I have my short-term rental, they have a great chamber, a great tourism department, and they have stuff going on every couple weeks that's going on down there, which is really nice because then I can use that to advertise my short-term rental. And then, you might buy something. Frisco actually has a lot of corporate travel. So you kind of have to decide, okay, well, I'm going to go after families, or I'm going to go after, corporate CEOs. I'm going to go after visiting professors. So you kind of have to have a little thought about, the area and who comes to that area. And then, okay, I use the word legality. I'm not an attorney. I'm not, a CPA or any of those things. But when I talk about the legality of it, what I'm really talking about is the restrictions that cities and HOAs, particularly HOAs, put on short-term rentals. So you all might have heard about, and it wasn't just us, but there was a couple of incidences here in Plano, Texas, where one short-term rental turned out it was being used as a brothel. Okay. And then there was another one that they actually had some other illicit activities going on. And so the city of Plano got together. The neighbors were really upset, and they put in some bans in Plano, Texas. Now you can still do some people are still grandfathered in. And if you were to go to Plano and you wanted to buy a short-term rental, if it already was a short-term rental, you can buy it and continue running it as a short-term rental. But they were restricting who could have a new short-term rental. So the city did that because of bad owners, right? And then you want to know what the proven demand. So the first thing you want to do is look at areas that have a lot of tourism, something that draws people, right? And then in that area, are there any restrictions? And then you want to find out, well, is there any demand for Airbnbs? And you can go to a platform called AirDNA. It's a free platform. You can get a paid membership. I use the free one. And you could type in any address anywhere in the US, and it'll let you know how much money you possibly could make off of that short-term rental. So you do the area, you find out if there's any restrictions, and then you could go to this platform called AirDNA to say, okay, well, I'm looking at a property at 123 Main Street in Detroit, Michigan. Is it going to make any money? I'm going to put in it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it will come back with some numbers that say, yes, she'll make, $50 a night or $100 a night or whatever the number is. But what you have to pay attention to is the vacancy rate, because it might say that you can, and it's just an average, right? It's not like, oh, you really are going to make this money, because if you're a terrible host, you're not going to make any money, right? If it's saturated, you're not going to make any money. So you have to kind of look at that's just one way to kind of look at the property, the area you're looking for. So once you choose your area, you can filter by property size. So remember when I was talking about that Foreclosure Daily list? So let's say that I was looking for a place in Disneyland, California, or let's go Orlando. And, I might want to find a house or a duplex or something that has at least 4 bedrooms in it. Well, you know what? On my Foreclosures Daily list, it not only gives me the property address, the zip code, it tells me that it's a single family 4-bedroom, and it'll tell me what year it's built as well. So it doesn't have all that information all the time, but I'm saying like 85% of the time. So then I can really do a targeted marketing to that 4-bedroom that I'm looking at the pre-probate. Single family, small multi-family, select condos. On the list, I get condos, townhomes. So there's a guy here that he does really good in Addison, which is another suburb of Dallas. And he just buys 1-bedroom condos. And he has just made a little money making machine out of his 1 bedroom condos. He has them rented all the time. And the people that rent them are just people who are coming to Dallas for the weekend. So he owns about 5 of them, and that's what he does. But he really researched the area because Addison's kind of like a hip place. He has young people, I'm like saying like early 20s. There's a lot of bars in that area, but it's also very central to all the things to see and do in Dallas. The value range that supports short-term rental income versus purchase price. So you'll want to know, okay, if I'm buying a house for $300,000, is it going to cash flow? Okay, because that's where AirDNA can come in and help you. So you have your purchase price. And then, one of the things I have it on here, you're probably going, why does she have that on there? Parking availability. I've been in many short-term rentals because when I travel, I usually like to go to a short-term rental, and nothing is more annoying than having to park 2 blocks down from where I'm staying. And one time we went to California, we stayed in like an apartment complex kind of situation, condo. And the parking they had a parking garage, but it was so convoluted and you had to have a key fob. And I mean, it was just a mess. But that's actually one of the things people search for is free parking because they don't want to pay for parking. So, nothing's more annoying than going to a hotel, right? And you get a good rate. Let's say you go get a great rate on staying at a hotel, but then you have to pay $50 a night to park your car, right? It adds to your expense, right? So the lead types and how to use them. So for probate, you can look for opportunity for condition and price flexibility, meaning that the usually with probate and pre-probate, in my experience, not always, the house usually needs it's usually been taken care of, but it needs cosmetics, right? And you're going to do that anyway. So usually when you buy a short-term rental property, you're going to go in there and you're going to put in nice lights and, upgrade the faucet handles and, have maybe recessed lighting and just, you're going to make it because you want it to stand out. That's how you really make money. So you can you can be looking at a property and kind of go, you can look at, okay, well, is this property like I need a lot of repairs? Is it a hoarder home? And with the pre-probate, there's such a long runway. You get early access to the property, but it might take a while to close it because of the family, not because of anything. That's just been my experience. And then foreclosures, oh my gosh, if you're going to work the foreclosure list, then you have to really, first of all, you got to really do your numbers fast, right? Because by the time you get the list and you get the person that's going through foreclosure to contact you, they might be going to auction the next day. So like in Texas, first Tuesday, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I've seen people like they have been able to stop the foreclosure an hour before auction, but you have to be really on your game to do that. That's not how I roll. That makes me too nervous and, and I'm like spending all my time trying to get the person to close and things like that. So that's not how I roll. I like the pre-probates because it gives me a long time to work with the families and get the kinds of properties that I want. And you'd be amazed at the value. So I just did the list. We were getting ready to send out before we get the list tomorrow. And there's like $2 million houses on there. So I do partner with a realtor. And so sometimes we list those properties. But if I was in the market for a high-end luxury short-term rental property, that's Foreclosures Daily has those types of leads. So it's not just, the mobile home out and back. It's like really nice homes that the value could be like 500,000 and the highest one I've seen so far is like 22 million. So there you go. So you have this wide range of property values. So that's why I'm saying pick your area, make sure you can do short-term rentals in it, and then you just start marketing on your on your list from Foreclosures Daily. So the same short-term rental criteria applies to all, only the motivation differs between these three groups of lists. So the foreclosures, I mean, they're motivated. No, I'm not saying the person's motivated, but you have to act fast because the house is going to auction and it's going to be, off the rolls. Pre-probate, you have a little bit longer time to work with the families. And then probate, depending on what state you're in, it can go fast or slow. It just depends on where they're at in the filing. So I call this from lead to deal, fast validation. So here's how you can quickly decide if you are marketing specifically for short-term rentals. Now, let me preface this. So when I get my list from Foreclosures Daily, I'm marketing to my entire list. I have my own criteria where I break down the list into areas and property values and bedrooms and age and zip codes that have a high crime rate. So I kind of weed all of the things out that I need, and then I market to my entire list, because my marketing strategy is I'm looking for buy and holds, I'm looking for flips, and I'm looking for short-term rentals. So but what I'm talking about tonight is that if I were to look for specific short-term rentals in a particular area, this is how I would do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is like the area. So let's just take Wiley, Texas. So Wiley, Texas has really great malls. It's another suburb of, I just watched a movie about Wiley, Texas. That's why it's on my mind. And that's Wylie. It's a very nice community. They had a lot of community events and whatnot. So let's say, and they allow short-term rentals. So let's say that I just wanted to, I wanted to focus on Wiley, Texas. So I'm going to find out all of the zip codes that would be closest to the events and highways. I'm going to get my list from Foreclosures Daily. And then I'm also, before I start sending out any cards or anything, I'm going to go to the city website, and I'm going to find out, are there any restrictions in Wiley? And then I'm going to do it this way, because I also want to know, I can research. I'm also a Texas licensed broker, and I can research the zip codes and what subdivisions are in those zip codes, and I can do my research to see if they have any restrictions for short-term rentals. Now, that's a little bit more work, but I can do that. So then once I kind of go, okay, all of these areas I can have a short-term rental. Then I'm going to go to AirDNA, okay, because I want to see, well, how many Airbnbs are already in that area, and what can I make per night on let's say I want to get a 4-bedroom house and I want it to have a pool, right? Or a hot tub or something like that. So what is the market demand? Then my next step is, okay, income versus expenses. So I already said that my kind of buy box, if you will, the price that I'm willing to spend, I'm probably not going to go more than $350,000 for a 4-bedroom house. Now, might be kind of hard to do in Wiley, but when I say that, what I'm saying is that the house value might be higher, but I personally am not going to spend more for the house, because I want to make sure I'm making money on the buy side. So when I buy it, I want to make sure I have a lot of equity in the house. And then, okay, let's just say I find that 4-bedroom house and it's got a pool, and now I have to do a little research. Now, this doesn't have to take hours and hours, right? You can do a lot of this online, but now I want to find out, okay, what it's going to cost. What's the average cost of cleaning a 4-bedroom house? What's the cost of insurance? Because I can tell you this, insurance has been a killer on some real estate investment deals. But I did learn a tip, and this is why I'm picking Wiley, because I have a rental house over there. Did you know, here's a little tip for you. If you purchase a rental property, whether it's a short-term rental, long-term rental, and it's close to a fire station, 2 things. One, you're hardly ever going to have your internet go out, because the fire station, they can't, they need their internet. And number 2, insurance is a little bit cheaper if your property is with a certain distance of a firehouse. Who knew? I didn't know that, but I found it out because I bought a rental property there. So I am going to kind of know, I need to know how much it's going to cost to have a short-term rental. So when we talk about cost, we want to talk about insurance, property taxes, utilities, and the upkeep. So if you have a pool, you will have to have, somebody service the pool. So just, you can just do kind of a quick, okay, I'm going to pay, what's my mortgage payment going to be? Then you know what your expenses are going to be. And now from AirDNA, you know how much money you can make. So you can kind of quickly do ideas like, oh, is this going to be a good property? And then I have layout and condition, because condition has to do with, how much work are you going to have to do on the house to get it up to speed to even be a short-term rental, right? And then the layout. So, have you ever been to those houses? I think they built them like in the 70s and 80s, and you walk in the front door and they put a wall there. I think this was like a thing, right? I just got done. If you've never watched Mad Men, I think it's Mad Men. Anyway, it has Don Draper in it. I just got done watching the whole series. And so they would open these houses up, and there'd be like sunken living rooms, or there would be a wall as soon as you walk in. So unless you can do an Instagram something, but you have to kind of think about the layout. So when I travel, when the kids were younger, I wanted my bedroom to be on the other side of the house away from the kids, right? So, think about the layout. So just think about when you go on vacation, do you want your children to be right next to you, or do you want them to be, down the hall in the larger bedroom where you're going to be at is, on the other side of the house. So if any one of these steps fail, then you just move on, right? So you just move on. So as you're marketing to your list. Now, again, you might be like me and you say, well, you know what, if I can find a good flip or a good long-term rental, I'm going to do that. So validating demand. So I'm going to go back to talking about AirDNA. So occupants, so there'll be some things, and I was going to kind of bring this up and show you, but it usually more questions than we have a time for. So you can go into AirDNA and just play around with this, but it's going to give you some numbers. So the one number it's going to give you is like, what is the average nightly rate that this property could make, right? And then it's going to give you an occupancy rate, which is actually more important than the nightly rate. Because let's say it says you could make $500 a night. Wow, that's really cool. I could do that. But the occupancy rate is like 20%. So what that means is that through a 12-month period, it's only going to be rented about 20% of the time. So you're looking for an occupancy rate that's at least 50%, right? And there's things that you can do to push your occupancy rate up. But that means, how often is it going to get booked, right? So if it's only going to get booked 20% of the time in a year, even though it's $500, that's not going to help you for your P&L. So that AirDNA, it shows pricing power. Now, I have done this where I've taken, it might be a 4-bedroom house, but you can make it sleep 10. Now, sometimes the difference between 8 beds and 10 beds is only $50, but sometimes it's $200. So you can play around with that information as well in AirDNA. And then comparable properties. So one thing that you can do is you can actually go on to Airbnb, all right? So not AirDNA, but Airbnb. And if you have ever stayed in an Airbnb before, and what you want to do is you don't want to log in. You just want to go to Airbnb and you want to type in an area. So let's just pick Pigeon Forge because I went there and I really would like to buy a short-term rental there, but they're very expensive and there's a lot of them. But if you go into Airbnb and you just say, where do you want to stay? And it says, I want Pigeon Forge and I want a 4-bedroom. And you can put in, filters like pet friendly, because I do recommend being pet friendly. I don't take cats, but I do pet friendly because you'll get more people if you're pet friendly. But you'll find out how many other short-term rentals are in that area. So AirDNA gives you the nightly rate, but Airbnb, and then you can move the cursor around on the map and you can look at your competition. That's kind of what I do when I have decided on a particular area. Then I'll just go, okay, well, who's doing what in this area? So one of the things that you can do to make people want to stay at your place versus somebody next door to you, put in a hot tub, be pet friendly, do the outdoor experience, where you have the fire pit and the lights and all of that. A pool, if you can do that. If you have a house, I work with people that they have like a 3-bedroom and then they put bunk beds in all the beds or in all the rooms thinking that they're going to make more money. It doesn't work that way, right? You can't throw in more beds just because, and the rule of thumb is however many people can sit at the dining room table, that's how many beds you should have to sleep. So if you have 6 person table, then you should have enough beds for 6 people, which would be like 2, 2, 2, right? Because you're thinking like, oh, I'm having, like in my setups, I usually have 4 bunk beds in one room, two sets of bunk beds, and then 2 queen beds. If I have room in one of the bedrooms, I will put a king size bed, but generally I just use queen. So your income reality check is that you want to use the 50% rule as a baseline. So operating expenses typically consume 50% of your gross revenue. So when you're working with a short-term rental, just if you've never had one before, you might just shop around for insurance now, because the thing with short-term rentals is that a lot of insurance companies are not covering them. And there's only a few, like a handful, like I'm gonna say 6 companies that actually will do short-term rentals. So that's kind of, in the legality thing, it's not really a legal thing, but what you want to make sure of is that you can get coverage in the area that you're in and be prepared to pay more. So a friend of mine decided they couldn't sell their house, so they decided to Airbnb it. And so they moved out. They actually bought another house, moved out of state, and they, hired a property management company. And I asked them, I said, well, did you change your insurance? Because they still had their homeowner's insurance on it. And they did not. And here's the thing, if the insurance, if something happens, you have to file a claim or whatever, and the insurance company finds out that you were using that property as a short-term rental, they can deny it, right? And her particular property had a lot of, it had a house with a pool in it, and there was no gate or anything around the pool, and there was a lot of liabilities. It was on a cliff and so on and so forth. So they struggled to find insurance. They finally did, but it's super expensive. And so now, not only can they not sell their house, but they're completely upside down with their monthly expenses. So you just kind of want to be smart about, where you're going, and do check the insurance before you actually get to the closing table. So, and make sure and cleaners, oh my gosh. So since I started I bought my first Airbnb about 5 years ago. And I'm telling you, the cleaners are making the most money out of anybody, because they figured out that a good cleaning company is worth its weight in gold. And so now cleaners, when I first started out, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I was paying, remember, people are moving out like over the weekend, so they're not even there. So I was being charged anywhere from 125 to maybe 150 if the person was messy. Now the base price is like 185, right? And it goes on up to 225. So the cleaners are definitely, making a lot of money. And you have your utilities, your insurance, maintenance, and then supplies, keeping it stocked. So people don't think about, oh, you got to replace the linens. Oh, you have to, usually you have to have 2 sets of linens for each bed, because when the cleaner comes in and they're cleaning, and then they don't want to stay there all day and do all your laundry, especially if you have a big property. So you just have to have a lot of stuff, right? So basically, if your numbers don't work, they won't work later on. So that's why it's very important to do your due diligence, not just on the area, but how much money, and then of course all your income and expenses. Now that I've totally scared you about having a short-term rental, or maybe I haven't, you're like, okay, I'm ready. I know I have to do my numbers. So you want to have characteristics. So the way to make money in a short-term rental is to provide a nice, not just a nice clean property, but where people like walk in and they go, wow, right? There's a wow factor. And the wow doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but it has to be, something that, think about when you go on vacation, what's your wow, right? So my wow is that, I like it to smell nice, and I'm not talking about, air freshener plugins. I like clean. I'm a minimalist kind of person, so you're not going to see me with a lot of, like, this picture has plants in it. I would never have that because I'd be afraid that the cleaners wouldn't, they'd be dusty or whatever. So you want to have a layout that sleeps enough guests. You want to have easy access and parking, and it needs to be safe, convenient location, because again, you might have the best property. You may have gotten the best deal. It's going to cash flow. But the thing is, and AirDNA said you were going to make a lot of money. But the thing is, AirDNA does not know that you just bought next to a biohazard waste area, or the airport, or a busy street, right? So you have to kind of think about those things. And I looked at a property, and this was a few years ago, and it was beautiful property. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful. It had a huge yard. It was beautiful, but it sat on a corner lot, and the lot was very big, and it was on a busy, like the traffic going both ways. They had a big wood fence, and there was big trees, and there was no way to soundproof that, right? And so if the person went to bed and then all night long they heard honking, and the house, they would have given me a good review about that, but the location. And so what happens if you get bad reviews on location, then when people, go to book your property, they're going to read those reviews and go, no, I'm not going to stay there. So that's why it impacts you. So guest ready execution. So I'm all about automation, so I don't use a ton of platforms. I use Airbnb, and they actually have some pretty good tools to automate, like I call it the guest experience. So I have it set up so that if you have reviews, and they're all good reviews. You can instant book my property, right? If you have pets, so it's kind of the communication. So I did simple upgrades that create higher perceived value. So the linens that I get, they're very nice, and I got them from Walmart. But you would not know that because they are super soft and nice, and they have held up like no other. And I do white, and I have never had a problem. I think we've had to replace in the whole time that we've done this, maybe 10 towels total. And that was because, the most damage I've ever had is from people's kits, right? I don't know what they were doing. They had a blue marker. Quality linens and towels. Clear access instructions. Now, people differ on this. So I've been to short-term rentals where they have a QR code for everything, and I don't like that because maybe I'm not getting Wi-Fi. I don't like that. I want to have a book that I can open up, and it tells me the restaurants, and it could tell me how to work, their thermostat or whatever it is. Some people I've gone to, they have like a little sticker everywhere with a QR code. And so the only way you know how to turn on the TV is you have to, open up the QR code. And I don't like that. So I wouldn't stay at a property that had that. And then just safety, cleanliness, and consistency. So it's nice to get good reviews. And I have found that even when there are problems, so I've had problems with cleaners. And one Thanksgiving, we had somebody stand at one of our properties, and the lady contacted me Thanksgiving morning. They got there like late Wednesday night, and the cleaner had forgotten to empty the coffee grounds. I'm a Mr. Folgers kind of gal, and the cleaner had forgotten to dump out the grounds in the coffee pot, and they had molded. So fortunately I was in the vicinity and I ran right out and I got her a new coffee pot, and it all worked out and everything. But because I was so proactive and just said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, a couple times there's been things that I've said, I haven't ever had to refund. I've only had to refund the cleaning fee once, and then I fire the cleaner. Because if you're losing money because you're a cleaner, get a new cleaner. So, but the experience drives reviews, but I also feel like the communication. So I like the automation and risk control. So automated guest communication, I kind of explained how that works. So you can just set up messages that go to people, hey, this is how our property works. Hey, check out instructions. And then we have cameras everywhere outside. And as long as you disclose it, it's not a problem. You can have cameras on the inside, but we have the Ring cameras that record. And I do check them when people come in because I do pets. I allow 2 dogs, and so I do check. And because our pet deposit is non-refundable. It's $150. They can have 2 dogs, and I allow pets. And you'd be amazed at how many people will try and sneak pets in. It's crazy, right? Because I allow pets. But one time I had a guy, and he brought his 4 big German Shepherds, and I was like, no, we have a 2-dog limit. So then you have to call them up, and I just say, hey, I saw on the camera that you have 4 dogs on the property. You need to remove them. But otherwise, not too much, not too many problems. It also helps, for when no one's there, and just to disclose it. And then I like the keyless entries, but I always have a backup, because here's the thing. When someone comes to the house and I have one of those Schlage encodes or something like that, what if the battery, stopped working? Well, I'm, a couple hours away from my short-term rentals. I'm not going to drive there in the middle of the night. So I always have a spare key that actually unlocks another door hidden somewhere on the property that I will let the guests know if they get locked out. So my short-term rental deal formula is that Foreclosure Daily gives you the opportunities, right? The leads. I've talked about how you can identify areas and then you can market to them. AirDNA confirms what the demand is and how much money you can make. And your numbers, your purchase price, rehab price, your income that you can make, your expenses on a monthly basis is going to determine what your profit's going to be. And then your system. So once you get that far, then you can create systems to efficiently run your short-term rental. And this is how you turn those leads from Foreclosures Daily into a performing asset. So my takeaway for you is that profitable short-term rentals are built through selection, not guesswork, right? So you have to start somewhere knowing the area. So Foreclosures Daily leads give you early access to those areas, and you can have a simple, repeatable process that turns leads into income-producing properties. That's like what I do. So now, if you want to know more about real estate investing, and my daughter and I wrote a book called Own It. And it has the 5 ways that you can make money in real estate. We talk about it. You can scan that QR code and download it. It is $17 and it goes right to your email. So if you have any issues, you can email me. But we talk about how we can help people get out of the rat race through real estate investing. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And I'm wishing everyone a happy holiday. I'll be back January. I don't remember what the date is. But if you do have any questions, you can always reach out to me at nancy@foreclosuresdaily.com. And you can also reach out to your Foreclosures Daily person to talk about areas that you might be interested in investing in. And I'm pretty sure, and Joe probably can confirm this, that you can get whatever holiday deal is going on right now. Because I bet you they have a holiday deal, right? Right, Joe? Would that be right? All right, I'm going to go and see if we have any questions. Okay, you guys are going to have to bear with me because, as I said, Kelsey normally helps me with this. So I'm going to just go down to the bottom and see. Kendra, we want to say I hope you get better. Yes, Joe's saying, hey, you guys, he has end of year specials. I knew he did. Yes, total infringement on homeowners' right. That is, that is a problem with the restrictions that have come about. So you do have to be, except when it's a brothel, right? Christmas sale. Okay, I guess we don't have any questions tonight. So I want to think we're going to finish up a little bit sooner tonight. Short-term rental and an HOA community. Is that a question, Joe? You can. I mean, if the HOA provides it, I'll give you an example. I bought a house, so I wasn't as savvy when I first started out with the short-term rental situation, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to buy this house. It was going to be a short-term rental." And then at closing, I was reading the deed restrictions, and you know what happened? The deed restrictions said you couldn't run a business out of your house, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you can't do this or whatever." So I went on to this is how you really find out about the neighborhood. You go to Facebook and you look up the community, the HOA community, because you will find out pretty soon if you even want to have a short-term rental in that neighborhood, depending on how the neighbors are anyway. But I actually found out that there was a house for lease, and so I called the guy and I told him what I was doing, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, half the neighborhood is either short-term rentals or long-term rentals." I was like, "Okay." So I didn't even worry about it at that point because if the HOA did come after me, they would have to come after all of those other homeowners, and there was over 100 of them. So that's how you can find out about very quickly. Was there another question? Do I only if I know that I can do it. Now, the thing about HOAs though, they can change the rules. So some of my investor clients, they don't like to buy in HOAs. So unless it's already established, like I don't want to be the first person. And let me just say this. I mean, we talked about short-term rentals, and what I do want to preface with everybody, because the market always shifts, and that's what happened with a lot of people during COVID. They bought properties and they didn't say, hey, if I can't rent it as a short-term rental, can it be a midterm rental? Can it be, there's a newer thing, it's not brand new, but it's called pad split. And it's where you rent out bedrooms, right, to different people, like you give them a lease or whatever. So you should always have a backup plan, like either it's a long-term rental, you can do owner finance, but when you buy a short-term rental, always make sure you have a second strategy just in case something happens and you can't. So in answer to your question, Joe, on the HOA, if there are other rentals there, then I would feel pretty comfortable with it if there was a lot. Now, if I was just one of a handful, probably not. But the HOAs, they can change the rules to restrict them. So in my particular neighborhood where I live, when short-term rentals started being a hot thing in Frisco, some of my neighbors, now I didn't realize, as a homeowner didn't really want, short-term rentals across the street from me, but our HOA went in and did a restriction. So now short-term rentals means you can't have anybody leasing your home for less than 30 days. So now that same house is now a rental. So I can't see the Christmas special. I guess my question only goes to the host. No, you know what, Kendra? What you need? Yes, it does just go to the host. So just reach out to Joe if he's your person at Foreclosures Daily. So Joe, Kendra Murphy is asking about the Christmas specials. Okay, guys. Oh, here we go. Okay, thanks. Alrighty. Well, everyone have a Merry Christmas. Stay safe out there. Be well, and I will see you next month. See you later. Bye bye.